Podcasting since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts Radio Network. KingofPodcasts.com.
You really think The Rock is all to blame for WrestleMania? Well, you're wrong. And it's time to go and separate the signal from the noise.
Woo! Hey, this is the Nature Boy Ric Flair. And believe it or not, whether you like it or don't like it, learn to love it. Because you have to listen to Wrestling is Real. It is the best thing going today. Woo!
The worldwide leader of podcasting excellence. The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents The Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Time to go and go through the fallout of WrestleMania 41 here on the Wrestling is Real podcast. Thanks for listening in. Finding the show, King of Podcasts here with you. And if you haven't done so, I put into the show description on a regular basis. There's a lot of ways you can help support the show. I want to go ahead and talk about those real quick while I have a chance for all of you to join me here. And that's just this, okay? So you're always welcome to go and buy me a cup of coffee. There's a link in the description and on the website, kingofpodcasts.com. If you want to drop me a PayPal or a Cash App, you can also find ways to go and do that as well. Just asking for a little bit of help with the cause. If you really enjoy this show, drop a little bit in the tip jar. I hope you'll go and consider that. And on the website, I'm probably going to have to go and change the menu so it has a tip jar up there. Maybe you can put one up there. I'll figure it out soon enough. But I also want to do things where if there's any donations that come in, whatever I make in advertising, I always go and put it back into the show. Because that's what I like to do. I like to go and continue to enhance this show, make it better and better. And that's what I wanted to do for all these years. And I really appreciate all of you that continue to listen to the show on a regular basis. Thank you so much for that. Now, let's get into what's the real meat and potatoes of what has happened this weekend after WrestleMania. I'll say this, first of all, I'm glad that we had AEW Dynamite tonight. That was a palate cleanser if there was any that we needed this week. Because I was personally getting very tired. And I don't know how people can really just go through and constantly watch that much WWE at one point. 4 days in a row like that. Plus you have Stand and Deliver, which I didn't catch. NXT. There's just a lot. And there's a lot we can go and point fingers at as to what things went wrong that could have made the show better. But at the end of the day, we'll go through what everybody else has been criticizing and complaining about among the juvenile delusional fan base out there, the fandom. They all have their things where they want to go after The Rock because of how the ending of the WrestleMania 41 main event of night 2 with John Cena's win to become undisputed WWE champion, right? That's the first thing everybody wants to go after. And you can go after that. And of course, we've also made our points about why we didn't understand why The Rock did not show up at all after the initial start of the angle. Well, he went on Pat McAfee to go and explain. We'll talk about that. And we'll go through some of the other things that have been talked about since then. Because there's a couple of things that have been brought up. There's a lot of press. And with all that press, we have a lot of things to go ahead and bring up that we can go and play back, and we can also discuss and we can bring up and bring forward. We're going to go into all of it. We're not going to waste any time on that. Here it is. So you have a couple different people that are part of this WrestleMania 41 talk that people are all getting upset about. You can go after The Rock and his absence with John Cena as part of this angle, the heel turn that never made real sense. And John Cena, for weeks, had to go on a generic storyline to go with this house show loop of a TV show that was on European tour, only to have a little bit of change, a little bit of confrontation once they came back to the States the last 2 weeks. That European tour did not help things at all to help build up for this show. Then we move forward into Becky Lynch going into business for herself because obviously she has creative control. Deciding to go ahead and turn heel when she did with Lyra Valkyria and whatever goes on with that now. Then we have the issue with Joe Henry and the way he was positioned as TNA World Heavyweight Champion going on to a WWE WrestleMania event and getting squashed in 3 minutes. 3 minutes, 10 seconds. Who's counting? But anyways, all those things right there did not help. And then some of the things they did on Monday Night Raw that was just hot shot booking at its best. Eric Bischoff would be so proud to do what he did. But there was hot shot booking just for the sake of hot shot booking. And the juvenile delusional fan base it's funny, the smoke and mirrors and all the shiny little objects that WWE can actually do to kind of retcon what happened. A little bit of damage control after WrestleMania. They did make a couple of storylines or a couple of things happen with angles. Heel turns galore just to get things started. Plus a return in Rusev, which didn't have really any rhyme or reason to that either. But that's the part I'm all worried about. Like, everybody has this thing about, like, there's a thought there are storylines when there really aren't storylines, and characters when we really don't have characters, and changes that are being made that are really not changes. Overall, the biggest underlying factor that WrestleMania struggles, it still comes down to the fact that you have a roster of stars, a plethora of stars down at NXT, which, by the way, they haven't gotten called up in a while. Right? I don't know how far we go back into some of the stars they've had down there for 2-3 years that have not been called up. There's a reason why. Roxanne Perez has not been called up. Has been occasionally up on the main roster here and there. Then you go ahead and move forward with Trick Williams. You haven't done anything with him. He's still down there anyway. And there's others out there with Lash Legend, with Joe Gacy down there, with Andre Chase. They give all these stars that came from the Rainbow NXT, converting into the return of the black and gold NXT. And nothing's really changed on that route. You had a lot of stars that just came in here. I don't know if it was just people that are part of the developmental system that they're just not, nobody's really going with. But instead, the call-ups that we get, it's no different than what AEW does. Taking established stars from outside that, you know, have some pedigree to them prior to coming into the company. Julia, Stephanie Vaquer, push them right on up. And they did. And then you want to go forward with stars like Rey Fenix and Penta. Okay, though that international unguent has already been put into place. Fine. But then you're trying to go ahead and work in a different way because of the fact that you're going to have stars here that they're not going to resonate well with the North American audience. Unless you don't care about that audience now, you're really focusing on that international audience for Netflix. So you'll have stars that might talk a little bit of their promos in English, but more in Spanish or more in Japanese or whatever they want to do. And they might just do that. And if they do that, I mean, the base audience that was built of this company is just being looked at and being neglected. It was always the fact that a North American audience, the English-speaking audience that watched this show, would be the core audience, and then the international audience would find a way to go ahead and resonate with it as well. Because of the characters, the storylines, and somehow those storylines and characters resonate with others, even if there was a language barrier. But that's not being done here either. So, I mean, that's what they want to do. Look, they're doing the call-ups from NXT. They're doing returns. They're doing debuts. They're doing big, massive changes in wrestlers that are on there from heel to face or whatever they want to do. They're doing it, but is it being done well? No. And I'm not playing into the conspiracy theory that Rock has it in for Triple H, and there's some work where him and Brian Gewirtz are going to take over the creative at some point, and they're basically just letting Triple H kind of just die on the vine right now, start to sink, and work his way through. Look, one of the things that I don't know if Triple H just wanted to do, but they obviously do a little more storytelling and a little more storyline work down at NXT. When you see some of the promos that he do, some of the packages they do, right? Trying to build up the D'Angelo family, which, by the way, another guy, Tony D'Angelo, has not been brought up, and he's been down there forever. Think of all those NXT stars that came from that point. Because remember, we had that change at NXT, and I bet you Triple H would probably say something about this, okay? Because when Vince decided to go ahead and make changes to the NXT product and go rainbow, it put a damper on what he was doing. Because with the NXT model that he had after pandemic, and what came out of that in the Performance Center and getting out of Full Sail was a lot of established stars. A lot of these stars that were in other organizations, older, veteran. So let's not treat the NXT as a developmental. We're going to treat it like a third promotion. We're going to treat it like an indie, the super indie, which is what he wanted to do. And he wants to go and just take the easy route of taking some of these established stars with great pedigrees for wrestling, and then he could find a way to go and do a little bit of polishing and get them to the main roster, which did work for some of the stars they had. It worked for Seth Rollins, Bray Wyatt, Roman Reigns, Moxley, all those. But you just can't keep going that route. I mean, because then who you're having to go and pick from now, you're not getting the pleasure or the ability to go and pick off that many stars from AEW or some other promotions that are out there. And for some reason, there's something about having to go and be too cool for school when it comes to what WWE is doing. They don't want to necessarily do anything very hokey. Only a little bit of that. Nothing funny, nothing comedy, nothing. It's just, they want to just keep it more professional. I don't know if that's what TKO wants as well, but the wrestling part, the hokey, the carny part, they don't want any of it. They don't want characters. They don't want that dynamic. Nothing like that at all. They want to keep that completely out. People with first names, last names, and just move along, and they'll have their thing, unless it's inherited from somewhere else. The main event picture is a quagmire. It's still people that Vince would have put up in the main event anyway, coming out of WrestleMania. I mean, there are still stars they are building up out of this, but it's so few that are doing well from it. And then some of your main event stars, you didn't do much justice for, where Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair take another loss at WrestleMania. You have Gunther and Roman Reigns take losses at WrestleMania. And that's like back-to-back years. They're just things that are going on where those are still main event stars, all of them, and they're not getting to do anything. Becky Lynch, you want to go and put her into some of this feud now with Lyra Valkyria when he's still a very main event level star that was built and created. And you let her go back to the original man gimmick. Nothing about big time Bex, none of the extra character. All the gimmick stuff has been stripped out. So we can go into a lot of things that were going on here. First of all, let's dig into Dwayne, The Rock Johnson, on Pat McAfee. And there's a number of things you can go and say that what happened over here anyway. And there are a lot of people that made a lot of opinions as to what happened in terms of, we're going to go in some order. First of all, we can go ahead and talk first about the John Cena win over Cody Rhodes and start there with Rock. And then we can go into the whole Paul Heyman stuff and what everything that is disseminated from the triple threat match from night one and what we ended up with on Monday Night Raw at the end of Monday Night Raw to finish out. So first off, let's go with The Rock about the finish of the WrestleMania match. And this is what he told Pat McAfee.
I knew then the best thing for the final boss, we've established this idea of Cody's soul. We can always come back to it. I did feel, and I made the call, I don't want to be involved in that. Step back. Let the final boss step back into the shadows. Let all the spotlight go to John. Let it go to Cody. Let's not make it about Cody's soul eventually or John's soul. No, let's let them do what they do. And I called John after Elimination Chamber, spoke to him, called Cody, and I said, I think the final boss's work is done.
Okay, but that's what happened at the end of the match. But let's go and talk about what happened at Elimination Chamber and why he came to Elimination Chamber. This is the story that he told to Pat McAfee.
A month before Elimination Chamber, I get a call from Ari Emanuel, who we know owns TKO. TKO owns WWE. He's been my longtime business partner and one of my best friends for over 20 years. He said, we need help at Elimination Chamber. Ticket sales are a little slow, but beyond that, he goes, what we are finding is with Elimination Chamber, it's become the pay-per-view that's been interesting. Fans have had fun, but it's also the conduit to WrestleMania. And how do we create a Elimination Chamber that people must tune in to see? How do we create that? And he goes, right now, we don't have that.
As far as I've looked at from the information that's out there, and the Wrestling Observer's have really been on top of this, Elimination Chamber was not suffering from ticket sales. Probably more Vegas that was struggling with that. Let's just make that clear. I mean, there's been a lot of things where Rock has come back after being final boss and just making a cameo appearance. Because he did it at Bad Blood. Nothing was meant about that, except for the fact that Cody was going to get screwed with something at some point. But then there's a patch up on the Raw on Netflix debut. And then he comes back again before Elimination Chamber the week before to confront Cody. And then we get the storyline we get to lead up to John Cena's heel turn, which there's been talk that the heel turn was supposed to happen at WrestleMania and not prior to. I mean, I don't know what you were going to do to make the heel turn for John Cena any different. The truth is, The Rock intervening was a great idea to start the angle. Let's make that clear. I think we can all, in consensus, agree with that. But then once The Rock is not even mentioned, we don't need him to be in the ring. He could be on video anywhere. He could be doing it on his phone. Somebody else could be taking it for him. Whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be where he's even there. It could be just messages from The Rock that are being sent to by text or, by message, whatever it might be. There could be something that comes in where The Rock is still embedded as the soul seeker and is able to control John Cena. And at least you mentioned him in storyline. I probably would have been fine with that. It wasn't that Rock had to be there. And I don't know if somebody would have said this to him or not, but to have the final boss involved in some way, shape, or form just to continue on. If somebody else was the messenger coming into the place, that could have been a role right there too. Whatever it is. And then Cody could have been confronting, where's The Rock? And then John is like on this brainwashing kind of thing as to why he did this. Because we didn't even have to go with John Cena going heel and have The Rock in if we just had to go ahead and have him go out like he did and just say he hates the crowd. You needed to build something up to that. Because if you weren't going to have The Rock out there to go and help out with this, then you needed to have something else that makes the John Cena heel turn work. They didn't go with that. So we have what we have. Now, what they're doing at this moment, I already talked about on the WrestleMania post show for night 2, which you can hear 2 nights of my post show recaps, kingofpodcasts.com. But now, on the second night, I did make mention that I'm fine with John Cena being in this role. I don't have a problem with that part. Like, you want to go and just say, okay, this is what we were expecting of him, and now we don't have anything else but, like, just to go with this. Okay, fine. I'd have been okay with it. And for those that want to just catch what I said, I'll go ahead and play back what I said. And this is what I said about this on the post show about John Cena. The clock is on right now as to what happens. If John Cena is able to go ahead and now hold on to the belt long enough to take it home and finish retiring with the belt. That's the storyline we have left, which keeps it open for a lot of different opponents. That's fine. At least we got that to work off of going forward. Now, there are a lot of stars here out of this WrestleMania that did not come out really well. So Braun Breaker loses the IC title. That's not good for him. Gunther loses the World Heavyweight title. Not good for him. And back-to-back WrestleMania losses. And then you get... Now, there's more to it, but the thing was, you have to go and resuscitate some stars that took losses at WrestleMania for whatever reason. And there's other stars you have. You need to kind of build them up pretty quick to get them to go ahead and go up against John Cena. The first one they went with was Randy Orton, which you could have had a program with Randy Orton if you wanted to go through with that. And just having that one last run. But it's going to be a one-off now. So instantly they set up Randy Orton and John Cena now. That's going to get set up for Backlash. Because it's going to be in St. Louis. The only reason they're doing it. And John Cena will probably win that match and move on. Because Randy Orton will not be looked at as the next main eventer or the build-up. They can do the build-up because he's also a main eventer. There's a lot you can go back into history with those two. They've done ad nauseum work together. So that's fine. There's no issue with that. But then you have to also build up stars that are going to be one-offs for John Cena to go and take on, which I would imagine would go all the way up to maybe Survivor Series. And that's like the last chance to go ahead and dethrone John Cena before he retires, or make it a Saturday Night's Main Event, whatever it is. And that's what you're going to do. Okay. So that's a storyline and main event that will hold off for a while. But the other thing you could be doing here as well is you could find a star that eventually is going to be the ultimate dethrone of John Cena. Who is that star? It's not going to be just another one of the mill. I mean, you want to just go and take Cody Rhodes away, then kind of build him back up, run through the ranks, gets back to the championship level, gets a rematch, and then wins it back? I don't think we want that. I mean, some people might want that. You can add that storyline as part of one of the possible opponents. But I would think that with John Cena winning here, I would want him to go through a lot of determined matches and get, really go through fatigue and go through the grueling part of having to go through these matches of his 27 dates that he has left, and make it where when he's towards the end, he is struggling a bit. He's not able to go ahead and keep going out there and performing as well because he's gotten older. He's lost a step, makes a couple of mistakes here and there, which you could see done on purpose. And then you build a new star that will be the one that will win the belt off of John Cena. And then you make him a star and you crown them. Like, I would love that idea if they took a star that can go in and go all the way up there and do that. And there are some stars that could go with that. Like, I would love to see like a Braun Breaker or a Jacob Fatu work their way all the way to John Cena. But who's the babyface to do that? Because John Cena's heel. You have to have a babyface here. I don't want this to be like a Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens. We're not going to have Seth Rollins or Braun Breaker. We're not going to have, is it going to be Roman Reigns? I don't know. Like, there's no consideration of who is that next star that moves up. I'll tell you, if you want to go and call up Trick Williams some point, like say you do the draft coming up. I don't know when the draft's going to be, but what if you do something where Trick Williams was to move up and get called up? And you work his way all the way up to November where he's the one that goes after John Cena. Upset victory, becomes champion into the new year. It's not that hard to go ahead and pull the trigger on some stars that you have and see what they can do. Like, do we have to go the route where if Triple H wants to go ahead and leave a mark for himself, what has he really done that's been different that would have been anything that Vince would have done? Except bring some of his friends back that were fired, brought them back to go ahead and have jobs. Where is let's forget storylines here. How about the stars we're actually building going forward? Liv Morgan already had become a star. Now you build her back up to being a star here. Okay, Dominic Mysterio. Now that's somebody that's actually been built up through the ranks, now becomes IC champ. Okay, that's great. That was a great move right there. Jacob Fatu, U.S. champion, another great move. Those are two stars to build up. But they're still both heels. Dominic didn't turn face when you could have had a chance to with Judgment Day. No, they made it clear he's still with Judgment Day, but there's a little bit of friction between him and Finn Balor. Got it. But then we can go ahead and figure out who else can you get. I say pick somebody else that wouldn't be the one that you would think. Build a star overnight. Why is it that hard to go ahead and do? We could absolutely have someone doing that right now. But hey, there's this kind of ceiling that's here, and I don't know if Triple H wants to go ahead and pull the trigger on somebody and take the risk of somebody being a big star and then moving forward. I don't know. And the thought like, okay, there might be some other people that might deserve to have this spot because they've been around for so long, but then you're the booker. If you think somebody else is ready to go and move up to that spot, then you just let them go to that spot. I would have no problem with that. I would prefer to go and see something like that. That would be wonderful. But they're not doing that. They don't want to do that. And then The Rock makes his point, and this is putting people in creative. Triple H at the very top. You know, want to say Paul Heyman, who else that were involved with the storyline here, but The Rock takes a subtle jab at the outcome of the finish.
These matches, first of all, I was very happy with the show. A couple of things I thought could have been better, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But overall, man, everyone, the work rate of every single performer, women and men, was dynamic. I thought. Okay,
so he's saying that things could have been better. I mean, there's no storylines to work off of. This company will not want to do storylines. Not the kind of storylines we remember going back to when Vince was in charge. They don't want to do it. And whatever they're doing in NXT, they don't want to do it up to the main roster. There's something about some kind of generic feel they want to keep up here. The house show loop they want to create. They don't want to do anything about that. They want to leave it alone. I don't know why. But The Rock wants to go and say there was something about that, and that was his part. Now, I'll still say this. I don't understand the whole deal about why we had to go and care about Travis Scott being out there. Because that's the other thing I got to say, too. Why do we need Travis Scott to be part of that match. Rock, because of the fact you didn't show up and Travis Scott did, then you need to realize that was the only connection that Travis Scott had to this whole thing. It wasn't with John Cena. It was with you. You brought him out there with you. So why even bring him out there in the first place? Travis Scott had no reason to be out there unless The Rock came out with him. And so everybody's going to remember that Travis Scott was part of the storyline of this angle. You want to do angles, you don't want to do storylines. You don't actually tell a story in between from the front and the back. You don't want to do that. Well, you're making it much more difficult than anything. Now, why did they not care? Well, look at Variety Magazine. The story came out. WrestleMania 41 becomes the highest grossing event in WWE history. They put it out there and said it, so they don't have to worry about anything else. They're happy with that. Viewership of the event increased from last year, which is amazing. So something about the fact that, I think part of it has to be that the international audience is now connected to Netflix and be able to go watch the pay-per-views probably helped increasing viewers. There's a lot that can be said about the tickets and how much they were selling, because the ticket prices were astronomical. But that also helped WrestleMania 41 become the most successful and highest grossing event in the company's history. That's great for that second quarter report coming up. Great for them. This was the first WrestleMania to live stream on Netflix in most international markets, and the first time it was held during Easter weekend. Merchandise sales on site, in partnership with Fanatics, up 45%, the highest grossing event of all time. Part of that was that too. E-commerce sales were up 86% versus last year. And they had 28 total partners in place, so all the advertisers and everybody else they had on board to promote everything. Because remember, every match must have had a sponsor. And then their hospitality partner on location, 75% increase in hospitality sales and packages. A lot of money made at WrestleMania. That's the success that WWE is worrying about. So it really doesn't matter what Triple H does, because of the goodwill of all the years of past WrestleManias. If they took a dump this year, they were going to make big money. And they did. And the broadcast deals are going to keep cashing checks. So they are not worried about any of this. This is like what Starrcade 97 for WCW was. Remember, when 97 NWO was doing so well, they were making mistakes. They were botching things up. But yet the money was coming in because the momentum was so strong. And that's being carried off of the 4-year Bloodline storyline. Let's make that clear. The Bloodline storyline carried everything, because we could also make a lot of complaints about what was going on in the undercard. The entire undercard was still massively rough. Right? Last year we did have at least a couple different feuds that were pretty consistent across the board, and they went with those. But one of the other things that we have is there's no progression of storylines in many cases. It's very hard to get to that point. And then also the progression of changes in who's where. The factions don't ever change. We still continue to have factions. They never go away. I'll never understand that part either. The Fanatics events experience, the fan experience of WWE World, raked in more than 50,000 attendees, a 21% increase from last year's WrestleMania events. Yeah, all these partners doing this big money kind of thing now, they got it. They got it. And on social media, 1.1 billion views throughout the weekend on WWE's YouTube channel. Sunday being their most viewed day ever. There's a lot of what they're doing. Look, that kind of news right there is so easy to go and print and put out there on any website or any kind of press release that you want. WWE right now can do no wrong. But that's because they are built off of the past work they've done. This is based on everything that happened before. 22, 23, 24. Nothing this year. But because of the futility right now and some of the storylines they have at this moment and how things worked out for this WrestleMania, this will create a sea change. Now, all that WWE can do right now is try to avoid too much damage from all this. Because you got to figure out, will the crowd start to diminish a little bit for some reasons? Ticket prices become too much for somebody to go to in a particular market. But they're also doing the thing where we can go international wherever we want. We're getting all these different markets we're going to, and we're not hitting all the cities like we normally do. We're not hitting as many house shows as we like used to because we're creating the house show experience on the TV shows. So forget the house shows. We're doing the TV shows like we do. And we're doing limited house shows. And overall, the morale in the locker room, I guess in some cases, is fine. Everybody just stays in the middle. Nobody's moving up higher than the others. Nobody's actually trying to strive to be that title holder because, they probably don't think they're going to get there. And there's no precedent in Triple H's run at the top of Chief Creative Officer where he shows that he'll have somebody that he's going to push to the moon. He's not doing it. And he has no motive, no modus operandi to do that at all whatsoever. He doesn't want to do that. If you're at least not going to do storylines, why don't you push somebody to the moon, push some new people up, and see what they do? Sink or swim. But he doesn't want to do that either. And in some cases, whatever the NXT persona there was, they'll just take them on up, inherit it, or they used to have some other NXT persona. Now they have to switch back to something else. And how many times are you giving creative control to the wrestlers that there's a gimmick they didn't like, they go back to themselves, and what do they become? Look, I look at with DIY, I look at Karrion Kross. Karrion Kross is a great example. Yeah, there was gimmicks he was given they didn't like, and now he's in this other gimmick that he's doing, which I guess he's happy with, but it doesn't move him up anywhere. He's just stuck down, in nothing. They put him with New Testament, anchored him. Now he's with Scarlett on his own. He's back to the gimmick he was in NXT, and, that's like years later. A little too late to make that change. Because I already remember Karrion Kross was on such a run in NXT. He was a champion over there. And they've never got him to be at the level. And they've never been able to go ahead and translate him towards the main roster. And there's a disconnect there. Whatever they have in NXT, that they can go ahead and play up to the 500 people in that performance center that will clap like steels on everything that goes on. Don't make anything sound loud, or same thing with Full Sail as your test market. And then you say, we're going to put them on that main roster. Oh, let's see how they do in Belgium, or they do in England, or they do in, India, whatever, or Saudi Arabia. And if the people don't know who they are, then what are they going to do with them? It's all this. So The Rock can go and say, oh, well, there's certain people we're not going to be able to do anything with. All right, fine. And whatever. So everybody was going after The Rock. Everybody was going after him and what he said. But everybody needs to not go into the part that this is the reason why everything was going rough. The selling his whole storyline, all this other stuff that's going on, everybody wants to go ahead and go pile on The Rock. I could give two shits about The Rock. When he talks about the soul storyline, here's what he says to Pat McAfee.
Involved in the finish, and I said, but why get involved in that finish when the spotlight should just be on, in my opinion, John 17, heel champion? What does 2025 look like if this man is saying he's going to ruin professional wrestling? That, to me, is the anchoring storyline. It's not soul right now. Right now, it's not. But, by the way, we'll go back to it.
We'll still got it, yeah. Still
we'll go back to soul. Look, I can't.
And that's just horrible booking. Somebody, Brian Gerwitz, you're like a best buddy with The Rock. Why aren't you getting in his head and saying, listen, Rock, you just can't just come back here and just favoritively come back when you want to go ahead and do a storyline. We got to have, the fans are going to be ready for it. Okay. So the soul storyline was a blanket. He's trying to say that he wasn't trying to be devil's advocate, that the soul storyline was just like, well, just buying everything that WWE is. That's like the kind of idea of what Cody was supposed to be given. And then John Cena went for it, but John Cena never explains why. We're just supposed to go ahead and dismiss and forget and have amnesia that The Rock was even there in the first place. Talking about with Cody selling his soul. Like once Cody said, go F yourself, then we're supposed to forget about that. But we're not. And yes, the focus on the 17th championship, you could have done that as a face. You didn't have to do it as a heel. So they decided to go and go with the 17th championship and make that the deal where Cena and Cody Rhodes went like a Rock and John Cena type feud for WrestleMania. That would have been fine. I don't think anybody would have really said much about that, but you know, the soul, it's not just the final boss coming in. It's the final boss taking your soul. You brought that, dropped that into the ether. And the problem is that there's a lot more interpretation that fans want to get from that. Because we could buy into that. I was ready to go and invest in it. Everybody else was emotionally invested to get into it. But you don't want to do it. And you want to do it on your own time. Which is, we don't know if that's ever going to happen. They could just be saying that just to say it. It's spin cycle. It's spin control right now that Rock is doing. To distance himself from any kind of criticism right now from social media and from the fan base. That's his way of doing it. Look, and I don't care about the fact that if Rock has to be involved or not. His involvement as chairman of board of directors, he's got the UFL going on right now. He's got his own stuff with movies and other things and other projects, his own production projects he's working on, I'm sure. I'm not worried about The Rock. We don't need him to come back as final boss right now anyway. So we're not going to get Rock and Reigns. Fine. I don't worry about that. Would have preferred to have that match this year or something to that effect. If you're going to give Roman Reigns something, I would have preferred that. But we're not going to get that match. That was a money match. That was a money match to decide not to go that route. Fine. I would have preferred that. But we don't need The Rock to be involved in anything else. Like right now, the Bloodline storyline would have been great. And if you want to bring him in here occasionally as part of the Bloodline storyline and keep him in that'd have been the best way to use him. Best way to utilize him on camera, on screen. No more with Cody. No more with John Cena. Just get him out of there. If he's going to come back at all, it should be for something like that. Or come back as like the legend and do some kind of blanket thing he wants to do. Make an announcement. Whatever. But probably best to be said that Rock stays out of all this other stuff. Because if Ari Emanuel did in fact talk to him about maybe you need to go and come back in and help us out because we need to get a little boost in ticket sales, fine. Let it be. Otherwise, there are a lot of people that look at certain stars that we have here coming into the company from the main roster from NXT or from other, or wherever else they come from. And they all come in with a various amount of hype or hope or fantasy that they're coming up with themselves. When I think about, I keep looking back at Rhea Ripley and Julia now confronting each other. And the aura that Julia has, because all they're doing is staring at each other. There's no talking in between each other. And, you know, the main roster crowd probably don't even know who Julia is. Some might. Like even when at WrestleMania, Joe Henry was recognized, people knew who it was. But it didn't matter. And we get to that part. I have the clip also about Rock trying to explain what the Soul storyline was going to be. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to skip out of that part because there's so much more to go and bring up. Now, next thing I got to bring up is the Joe Henry stuff. We're going to go into that next. I'm just looking through all the stuff that I looked at about The Rock and what's being explained. I'm like, whatever. So we'll go to Joe Henry in just a second, but let me go and bring this up as well. So there was one guy, Balor Club guy that was on X that explained that he and another person that went with him to WrestleMania 41 Night 2, that they had picked up two seats that originally were being priced at $5,000 each, but that the day of were able to pay $400 each. And they were just a couple of seats from front row. Behind hard camera, it looks like. Pretty good seats. But there are some people that were right next to them that paid $5,000 for seats. And there were some others that were like that. And of course, there's a clip going around where Randy Orton was talking to some fans and saying, I can't believe the prices where they were. But yeah. So now, here's the part that somebody actually put in here. Wrestle Features on X put a nice little story, a timeline of The Rock after WrestleMania 40, which says everything that we don't need him to be involved. So the Raw after Mania He gets in an awkward segment with Cody where the two exchange belts. Bad Blood, he counts to 3 and dips. Solo Sikoa states that this is part of the plan, but nothing's ever mentioned again. Raw on Netflix, Rock as babyface states that he and Cody have become good friends following WrestleMania 40, and The Rock endorses Roman Reigns. Then, before Elimination Chamber, he wants Cody's soul. Elimination Chamber, we see the turn. None of it means anything. It's as if The Rock just wanted to be on TV and have something to do, so they wrote him in on something that they could never, put anything together with. And that's what they chose. Now, Joe Henry, TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Anybody else could have been put in that open challenge for Randy Orton. Do we need to have that there? I mean, yes, Randy Orton should have had a match. Somewhere involved. I don't know where you put him. But I just think that you don't have a plan for him coming back. Then what are you doing with him? Like the fact that they never really had a really good idea of what to do with Randy Orton as a backup for him and Kevin Owens tells you a lot. Where's the backup to the backup story? We already know that people are going to get hurt. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens both got hurt. We're not back. Among other stars that are probably would be injured and could have been coming back to go and work WrestleMania. Who knows? But Joe Henry is an ambassador for TNA. He's going to go off appreciating what happened for him. And he was on the Ariel Helwani show talking about it. Here's what he said.
A couple of months ago, I was like, you know what, Mania? I still think I can do it. And it's weird. Like just anything that I'm thinking just seems to be unfolding. And let me tell you, Ariel, I've got a couple other thoughts of things that I think could happen this year.
Can you tell us more?
Well, you know the match I'm going for.
Yes, John.
And it just now makes more sense than ever. And this is all I'm going to say. All right. He's got some back. He's got Travis Scott in his corner. Can you imagine if a huge star in music just reached out to Joe Henry, someone in the same ball?
Joe Henry's just happy to be in the play. I mean, listen, it's good for him. Look, he's been good. I think people have enjoyed him being champion out here for TNA. That's great for him. Glad I'm going to say that. Now, he talks about the fact of working with Randy and on here, and I won't play the clip, but he was mentioning the fact that I don't want to speak for Randy, but from my perspective, he was extremely happy with how it went. We clicked immediately. We were on the same page. He was amazing to work with. All about creating moments at the end of when Randy does my spin and does his pose. People who know what wrestling is know that was Randy giving me a seal of approval. So he was being all gracious and complimentary, which is great. For TNA, it doesn't help. And there was a lot of commentary because Dave Meltzer decided to go ahead and chime with some of his followers or some others out there that wanted to go ahead and make comments. And Dave Meltzer went in and talked about what happened with Joe Henry, and he didn't like what happened to him. So it all comes back to the fact that someone made a point that Joe Henry's coming from the minor leagues and getting an at-bat in the majors. Doesn't matter that he struck out. Going from the majors to the minors, different story, get it? But Dave Miller said that's the point. It established TNA as the minors. And then Meltzer comes back and makes the point that wrestling's been around for more than 100 years. Show me one example of a significant company's world champion losing a 3-minute squash to a non-champion of another company. No other promotion in history would have allowed that. So that's the non-TNA opinion and 100 years of wrestling of such a thing. So he makes that point across. And I don't know if any other group does ever let that happen either. But TNA, we already know. I don't know what Scott D'Amore was thinking when he put the partnership together, because he's responsible for it. So we get to this point and we're like, all right, TNA is always been looked at as like stepchild right now, and only working with NXT stars, not with TNA, not with the main roster stars. They don't want to deal with that. Well, we already know that AAA is going to probably be treated as such, because now we're not going to just keep AAA. They're going to just turn it into NXT Mexico. So I guess some of the stars they have right now that are international, they can bring down to NXT Mexico and do what they want to do. create an NXT type UK kind of environment. But then it's going to be WWE's creative creating the matches down there. I don't know who they're going to have that's going to be booking down there and handling that. But we know there's going to be a lot of stars that could probably be let go as a result. And then there's a talk about New Japan being also bought. So look, we have other competitive organizations going along with against what WWE is going to be doing, because New Japan, at least you have Pro Wrestling Noah, you have All Japan, that are other routes for these stars to go to. In Mexico, you got CMLL. And then, you work on other things like that. So it's like there's WWE now. WWE doesn't want to. It's like Triple H doesn't want to do what Vince McMahon had planned to do: create new booking offices. That's basically what he's trying to say. Create some new booking offices. Let's build some new talent. Find some new talent for somewhere else. Triple H, he don't want to do that. He don't want to do it. Shawn Michaels doesn't want to do that. Something about these guys, they don't want to go and do the work of taking a diamond and polishing it into something that's going to be really rare and precious. It's like panning for gold. They don't want to go out there and go into wherever it is to go and pan for gold. They don't want to go digging for somebody that's going to be a diamond in the rough. They don't want to do it. There are plenty of other organizations who will do that. And there's some cases where you see some stars where, and look, that goes on as well, where WWE used to have a farm system and they had a way to go and do this kind of thing. Look, if it wasn't OVW, if it wasn't, wherever else they were going to go to for stars for Florida Championship Wrestling, there was something to be said about what FCW was. And the young stars they had out of this came out of nowhere and became stars. We still have stars right now that are FCW stalwarts that are still working all over the place. And I'm still amazed 10, 12 years later after seeing Florida Championship Wrestling all those years ago and seeing what stars came out of that. But that's when WWE actually had stars they were building up after the initial run of Ohio Valley Wrestling and other organizations they were working with, where they were taking up stars 15 years ago, where Batista, Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Randy Orton, among others, all built themselves into big stars. Young, raw, and then found their way up to the main roster and became big stars. Even if we're not going to do storylines, folks, because all those stars right there we're talking about, those were all like, pretty standard people that you saw and you could have done something with, but chose not to do that either. Okay, fine. But the fact that the WWE, they're no good at necessarily taking somebody from another organization and then building them up. Because look, we already see right now, anybody that's TNA related, they're going to put them in NXT. AEW related, they're going to be in NXT. The one thing they put out there today, what was it? Because NXT featured Ricky Saints being confronted by Alexis King. So it's Brian Pillman, Ricky Starks, and people are out there calling it AEW Dark, which it is. That's AEW Dark. And then it's like, what is their own homegrown talent doing that they're building off of? I don't know. I'd like to find out. So last night they did their fallout from Stand and Deliver. And you look what they decided to do. So Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez put the women's tag team titles out there and put up front. And then you have other stars who are kind of doing their own thing, but it's like there's not much of anything here. They got the Dark State they kind of build off of. Joe Henry comes back and returns to NXT. Thea Hale being built right now in a singles role over Fallon Henley of the, Fatal Influence, right? Noam Dar as NXT Heritage Cup. Somebody they're never going to put on that main roster again after having him over on the NXT brand, or what was it? The 215, right? Or what was it? I forget the name of the Cruiserweight show. I already forgot. 205. There we go. Damn, it's been a little while. And Stephanie McCare and Roxanne Perez for the women's title. But it's like, you got stars down here. You don't want to push them up anywhere else. And that's it. It's like, you had some stars that moved on up. And I don't know. There's not a real rhyme or reason as to what the NXT stars are doing They keep working down at NXT, but coming up to the main roster. And there's no passage of entry to bring them up to the main roster. There's no plan when they get brought up to the main roster either. None of that at all. I said they kind of given up on that. Unless it's some stars they're bringing back. Anyways. Becky Lynch. So, there's a lot being said about what she decided to do, and Brian Alvarez actually talked about that yesterday on Wrestling Observer Radio in the afternoon, and this is what he learned about when it comes to Becky Lynch and her creative control.
Because this whole thing was Becky's idea, okay? It was all Becky's idea. I heard about it in advance. Becky wants to come back. She wants to win the title and then turn on Lyra the next night. And when I heard it, I was like, what? Like, this is a horrible idea. Absolutely horrible idea. But as it turns out, her coming back and winning the title, I mean, if you went on Twitter after that show, I mean, they all cheered Becky and everything, but like very shortly thereafter, there were all the Becky Hogan posts. And, you know, then I didn't know that her plan involved losing the title. I thought she was going to turn on Lyra as champions and they vacate the titles or whatever. But then losing the title and turning on her, this all worked out perfect for a heel turn. So, I mean, it didn't at the Raw after WrestleMania, but she'll be a heel next week.
So Becky Lynch, and the other problem, the other thing they're talking about now is that the new Dangerous Alliance of Braun Breaker and Seth Rollins, along with Paul Heyman, that they might add a woman to the mix. There's been the reports of that. So apparently, Becky Lynch might join that group, whatever it might be. And some people will continue to go to bat for this company. I'm not going to say the person's name on X, but one person says, I keep seeing people say they want Paul Heyman's new group to be the next Dangerous Alliance, Four Horsemen, Evolution 2.0. Why does it need to follow any model? This can be its own thing and still be great. So far, we got Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker. You got to establish star and rising talent who's clearly about to break into the main event scene, especially with Heyman guiding him and Rollins as a mentor. But you turn Braun Breaker instantly heel overnight with no explanation. Whoever joins next will most certainly move up the card. Being in a heel faction with Heyman involved gives you instant credibility. So all the people that were involved with Heyman in that main event match, there's no titles around them. I mean, we can talk about stars that were also put together with Paul Heyman that never went anywhere, right? I mean, look at Cesaro, look at Ryback. Where did they go? So don't give me the whole thing of like there's instantly something about Paul Heyman is something about him that brings up in front. Is eye for talent and belief in the people. Look, he got to go and take two stars that he wanted that are over. Okay? That's all that happened. And now they attacked Roman Reigns and CM Punk. We'll see those four dance with each other at some point. What are they going to do? WrestleView on X makes the point and says that it makes total sense for Braun Breaker to join with Heyman because of NXT in October 2023. Heyman managed Breaker in a random episode where they were head-to-head with Dynamite, and John Cena and Undertaker appeared to beat them. And Heyman said Breaker was a future WrestleMania main eventer. So that's the attachment they can say that they have with Braun Breaker is why he joined. Still doesn't explain the heel turn, but anyways. Someone else talks about that the WWE has now moved on from the Bloodline era, that Triple H has given Paul Heyman a chance to pick a rabbit out of the hat. And right now, he saw Solo, Grills of Destiny, and Abandon Ship. And now he's going to work with Braun Breaker and Seth Rollins. And to say to pay close attention to who gets selected to be alongside Breaker and Rollins. Whoever they are will absolutely be selected recipients of a rocket ship and they'll be permanently made. Well, there's the other problem too. Heyman has his own route of what he wants to go and book. Becky Lynch has her route of what she wants to go and do. I mean, where's the nucleus at the top that's making decisions? Sounds like there isn't. Sounds like there's just certain people that have a lot of clout within the company. They're able to go and do what they want to do. As long as it works out. That's what they care about. So at WrestleMania, you had the women's tag team titles, and Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez dropped the belts, only to win them back the next night, as a reason for Becky to go and turn heel on Lyra Valkyria. With no momentum at all, Lyra Valkyria just came out of the blue. They're put together, and immediately Becky Lynch just going to take out. But for those that are watching on television, they don't even know why they should be upset at Becky going after Lyra. Because of the fact that they probably may not even know what was happening on NXT in the first place for them to understand what to care about. But of course, the very smart crowd that was at the show in Vegas on Monday Night Raw, I guess all of them kind of were along with that. They figured it out. We had the call-ups with Stephanie Vaquer, Roxanne Perez, Julia. Great. But nothing being put into who they're going to go up against. Like, Rhea Ripley's over here in this mix and like, or whatever. But like, you have matches to put together and I'm like, well, you're just going to have new stars in the women's division, just have new stars. So we know there's going to be some stars that are going to get dropped out because they decided to put these stars up there. First of all, you got 2 of the 3 stars that are absolutely going to give a language barrier. Because now you're going to have to expect them, much like you have Rey Fenix, much like you have Penta, there is a language barrier on those. Io Sky, same. All a language barrier. You can't get them to do promos that would be as effective as they would do for anybody else that's been on that main roster. So the promos are not going to care as much anymore. Make that clear. What are you left with? Wrestling. It's not like these stars are learning to go and learn English and are going to be immediately adept and their accent is going to be pitch perfect so that everybody can understand what they're saying. They don't care about that. So it's just creating athletes to come on up to the main roster and work predetermined matches. If it was legitimate, that'd be a different story. But we're losing the picture here. It's all predetermined, but yet we want to make it look as real as possible. I mean, do you want to write something down and create a story out of it, or you don't? Because it doesn't make sense to go and just have predetermined matches with not a real rhyme or reason as to why, who wins for what, and why we should care. Because we're not getting any of that either. We're just getting stars that are out here that kind of like have, you know, for Julia, Stephanie Vaquer, and Roxanne Perez, I feel like there's a bit of a cosplay with it. And that's part of the thing with the women. With Tiffany Stratton, with Bianca Belair, with Rhea Ripley, there's a bit of a cosplay feel to it. So because of the looks, the different nuances, the way that they are attired as they go to the ring, that's something to be admired. And then the way they look, and all the guys will simp over them and you'll like fall over. The girls will go ahead and gosh, like, oh, I love the way they look and this and that. So they're playing, it's the cosplay part. And for the guys, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your shape is. It doesn't matter what kind of anything that makes you distinguishing from somebody else. If you're just able to wrestle, it doesn't matter if you got like the big chiseled body or you're tan or you got this and never. None of that matters. They just don't care. Rusev comes back to brawl with Alpha Academy and possibly New Day. No reason why. He gets to do his moves. That's it. But Rusev's back. Don't know what he's going to do. He can be like Braun Strowman for all we know. And then Jey Uso, when you have the World Heavyweight title win, okay, Gunther is choking out announcers now. So he snapped. Okay. And then Jey Uso, victory lap with a very subtle thought that Sami Zayn might actually go ahead and turn on him. It's all these turns that are just like turn people to turn people. I don't know what they're going to do for Backlash and how they're going to get themselves there. And I have no clue what they're doing right now in terms of what the storylines are going to be moving forward. But while we have all this here that doesn't make any sense, it's just a big nest. A hornet's nest full of stars here and all this talent, and there's just no organization, nothing that feels like there's any kind of trajectory for any of this. They got something to start. They can't finish it. They'll have factions just for the sake of factions. And then when somebody leaves a faction or there's a faction that kind of ultimately the nucleus of that faction goes away. Edge leaves Judgment Day. He gets thrown out. But Judgment Day exists. Alpha Academy. Chad Gable left. But Alpha Academy exists. I don't know. I don't know what to think. LWO for the sake of LWO. Legado de la Fantasma for the sake of Legado de la Fantasma. Anyways, there's nothing to be understood. There's certain stars, I would have been surprised that you didn't give them a chance to be on TV anyway. Chelsea Green didn't get to go on TV. I don't know. She didn't go at WrestleMania. That's pretty shameful. Charismatic. She's good out there for a lot of different things. Not used at all. I don't know. You pin Penta with Dominic Mysterio. For what? You pin Penta. You pin Rey Fenix at WrestleMania. For what? Like, you're already making him chumps already. Yeah, it's okay. They can take a loss. I'm not here to make excuses just to make excuses. I don't even know how the juvenile delusional fandom can actually handle and withstand having to go ahead and push back. See, because what happens is the juvenile delusional fandom, you can't honestly give an explanation as to what's going on here. You're going to just stay in your bubble and just kind of justify what they do because you can't admit when the company's not doing right by creative. When fans like me are actually fighting for the fact that we want good creative for you to enjoy as well. See, part of it for me is I'm not worried about the fact that if I saw other stars that all of you want to go and be a part of and enjoy, that would have been fine with me. I'm not the one that has ever asked to go and see Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns and CM Punk and Drew McIntyre and Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens continue to be at the very top. No, I'd have been fine if they moved to the mid-card and you have somebody else take up. I've always said I want younger stars to move up to the top. This company's not going to do that. How many years are you going to wait for Trick Williams moving down the line or Tiffany Stratton going down the line? And then if they have titles, do they matter? Will it matter for Jacob Fatu to be U.S. champion? Will it matter if Jey Uso right now is World Heavyweight champion? Will it matter if Dominic Mysterio is IC champion? For some of them, it's going to be just because of their own raw talent. Their own raw talent. Because no matter what, the stars that are getting over are undeniably talented. Braun Breaker, undeniably talented. Jacob Fatu, undeniably talented. Dominic Mysterio, undeniably talented. Because they have, one of the things they all have right now is there's a pedigree with them. Remember, you're talking about with Braun Breaker and with, that's all pretty much generational. Even though I don't know Jacob Fatu's necessarily his lineage or his family lineage to the rest, but like he's Samoan, there's part of the whole deal of that whole family that he's somewhat in relation to wrestlers. So there's something about him inherently that makes him, attach and do so well in wrestling. Same thing with Dominic Mysterio because of that family. He's got the same we get Ray and Eddie Guerrero and being all those people. He gets it. And Braun Breaker being around the Steiners, that's all those stars are able to make something of themselves because of that. Meanwhile, everybody else that's coming from other indies or other organizations, are they doing anything at all? Like any of the stars we have that have come from the Next in Line program, anything from the ID program, anything from NXT, like you got 5 million, or the LFG program, like what else do you have? You'll have the Mexican office, you'll have, Japan at some point. You're going to have all these offices. Triple H and whoever else in WWE, okay? And, again, to Ari Emanuel and the team there at TKO, you're letting WWE go ahead and have all these different resources to procure, build, acquire, and build up talent. You're going to have all these places here. And all these people in the developmental, in the performance center, which I guess you're going to get rid of at some point. I don't know what you're going to do with that. But all this stuff right here is being squandered regularly. There's no one that's realizing a bit of a hierarchy, a system of how to get to the main roster. And when you get to that main roster, on having stars that have the grit, the determination, the ambition to become world champion. As Steve Austin has said, if you're not in the business to become the world heavyweight champion, or the WWE champion, or the women's champion, or the women's world champion, what are you doing here? You don't come here to play friends to go Olympic Village finding, mates or whatever, or just hanging out with friends because you just found a paycheck. It's not what you're in this company for. At the very top, the number one company in the world. And then for the fans out there, they've been brainwashed to go ahead and just say, well, anything that the WWE more or less does is fine. And they're the only ones that are allowed to criticize a little bit of it. Just a little bit. But meanwhile, if you're fans of somewhere else and you criticize, oh, you're bashed. Oh, if I say anything about AEW and how they're doing with things, look, man, I could go through and see from other shows what I enjoy, whether they're gimmickry or just really enjoyable. And I am enjoying it. When it comes to AEW tonight, I didn't worry about Master P coming back and whatever. I didn't care about that part. It's fine. But Samoa Joe, Jon Moxley, that's the whole setup for the world title right there. And the Ops and all. You had the Owen Hart Cup continue to move along. FTR now has Stokely Hathaway with them. And they get to deal with the Rock and Roll Express tonight. Cheap Heat. I'm all in for it. Fine with me. Young Bucks are finally back. They get in action. That's nice to see them back together and get that team back in here because they're very well needed. The MJS stuff with Hurt Syndicate. I love all that stuff right now. It's been great. Tony Storm continues to be great and such a novelty gimmick role, but I'm all into it. All in for it. AEW is not going to be the type of star. They're not going to be the kind of place where they're going to have necessarily a lot of young stars who are going to build up out of nowhere. They have some of those. So they're focusing on those still, for the most part. But then they also have stars they brought in from the indies that have been made better. Like Tony Khan's no expert at taking a young rookie star and pushing them to the moon either. They don't do that either. But they're taking established stars that are already been built up somewhere else. And I think they do a little bit better job of giving a little more capital as to making him a bigger deal. Because I do think the work with Will Ospreay has made him become better. Especially on the American front, he's much more recognizable. Konosuke Takeshita, I love the run they had with him, and they attached with the Don Callis family. It's funny. The Don Callis family has a particular effect with some of the stars they have. And now Josh Alexander attached to the Don Callis family. There's something about that. There's something about that whole thing right there that helps out. When you want to make them heels, you attach them to that Don Callis family, and there's something about that. So I had no problem with, it's not like AEW is like blowing up the spot right now, but what they're giving me right now in terms of leading up to Double or Nothing is fine. Meanwhile, fans of WWE will just want to just shit on AEW, probably laugh at the fact that NXT is going to have a pay-per-view at the same time of Double or Nothing because they want to. They don't care. It's what their choice is altogether. Fine. So, all this fallback of what happened with WrestleMania is in the books. But there's so much that was done that doesn't make any sense on Monday night. And what are they going to do on Friday night? I have no clue. I have no idea what it's going to be. But everybody is complaining. There's not a whole lot of over-the-top happiness about what happened here. Not really. Not much. So what are we supposed to do next? I'm trying to figure that out. I don't know what we're going to be here and where post-WrestleMania, what this company wants to be doing and what they're going to be doing moving forward. I wish there was somebody else that had an idea of pulling the trigger because I feel like there's nobody in charge. I feel like Triple H is kind of just facilitating things amongst other people and letting it all kind of work out, and they kind of come with some kind of amalgamated kind of direction. But it's like they're just booking house shows. They're not booking for television at all. The storytelling is not television driven. And as long as they keep doing that, it's going to keep going to this route. And there's only so much life they'll have going this route. Because there's going to be a come to Jesus moment for this company where they're going to realize that this audience right here that you've bought into, they're not going to necessarily resonate with this. You're going to get tired of the whole, the chants they're doing right now, like the specialty of some of the shows that we have, and trying to build up some real storylines that are going up. Like it's right now, you might be creating some changes for stars, but there's no feuds or anything like that being built up yet. We have to wait on it. The one constant we have for sure is we have to go and have John Cena back for the rest of the year to create some stars off of him in this retirement run, where there are going to be some stars that'll be probably built off of him after they had matches with him. Because, to be honest, I think Solo Sikoa benefited working with John Cena. Austin Theory, I thought, had benefited working with John Cena. Just thought. I don't know if Logan Paul benefits and what his role is going to be in this. But he's also one of the young stars that there's a whole lot of about him that where he's being positioned because of his status, he is allowed to go and be in a certain way. But no one is in charge to the point to say, okay, they're not the matchmakers. Matchmakers are easy to find. But the booker, the person that's going to say, okay, this is the direction I want, and is the green light and is the overall say-so of how things are going to run. I don't think we're getting that at all. Because there is not one person that's in charge of that. And I don't know if the conspiracy theories are going to be out there that say, well, Triple H, he's probably getting himself set up to fail because of where things are. Because, with the way things were left for him coming out of the Vince scandals in 2022, he had quite a bit to work with. I mean, he was not left with an empty cupboard of talent and bad storylines. He had something to work off of that he could just kind of easily just integrate into what he wanted to do and bring some of the stars up and all this and that to kind of fill the mid card. So he got to do that route. But other than that, where are we? Because right now, since TKO has come in, hey, the big corporation has already figured out what they're going to do to go and make money. They have inflexed every bit of way to go ahead and suck out every possible dollar from every fan out there. It's very clear. They only care about the fans that are spending so much money to go to do the merchandise, go to the shows and pay the big money tickets for prices for these events. That's who they're catering to. They're catering to the fans there. They don't care about the TV audience. The social media audience, not really. They can't make direct money off of them. They don't care if you got a Peacock subscription or if you're watching on social media and you're watching some ads because of them. They could care less about that part. They want the ones that got the asses in seats. They're buying the merch. That's what they want. That's what they really care about. And even for them, they're not invested in the fact that they want to go and create a great product out there. They just want to have these stars dressed out in cosplay with their gimmicks, with their chants, and all the things they get to go and do with their interests. That's all they care about. So in the arena, that's all you care about. Because maybe that's all you're going to go and really think about, that you get to go and be part of this party. Otherwise, the matches are the matches. So after the entrance and everything else, you get to go along with the star. You see them in the match, you're done. And that's just a one-off. You're not following along and coming back the next week to go to the arena to watch something else. Because they're not building up anything off of that. They just want to give the same tour. Oh, here's the same thing everybody else got to watch, but now it's in my neighborhood, so I got to go and pay $500 a ticket to go ahead and watch this. And maybe get dressed up like the other stars that I'm really fans of. Fanboy or fangirl it out. Cosplay it. And then get to go and do all the chants and stuff. Participatory. So those fans are all in for that. But anybody watching on television, they don't give a shit about. They just don't. This is a clarion call. I hope this company will understand and realize this is not going to go on forever. That there's going to be a downslope with the trend that they're going with right now. There has to be a correction. I don't know who's going to figure that out and get the word to Triple H and the team before it's too late. But that's why we have other wrestling out there. That's why you have the Wrestling Goes Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.